News team, assemble!
It's back and bigger than ever. It's the unofficial 40 from SoonerScoop.com. Now, here's the entire SoonerScoop crew. Carrie, Josh, Eddie, and Bob.
All right, welcome back. It is the unofficial 40 podcast right here at SoonerScoop.com. And boy, we've got some. It's a day of announcements today. I will say, right off the bat, George Stoya, who I believe is listening in the other room, we have submitted materials to the big voice guy to have the pod intro redone. Our guy Duke out in Vegas, he says he will be snappy. But here's the thing. We have another pod intro to work on, which I need to huddle with you guys about today and huddle with some people tonight. Should we do it now, Eddie?
It's good to know that Stephen Paddock isn't our big voice guy.
Anyway,
that's lost on a lot of people. Some people will get the reference.
Eddie's doing the show for an audience of about 20. The crossover, I don't know. I don't like getting into the crossovers between our audience and Eddie's other audience.
I had to look
I think
that
they're
up.
the same.
Jesus Christ, Eddie.
What? Well, I just when he said Vegas, that was the first name that came to mind. It wasn't
obviously
it wasn't
the most common connection with Las Vegas.
It wasn't Tony Bennett or whatever the guy's name is. What's the singer guy's name? Is it Tony Bennett that did the long-standing thing out in Vegas?
One of several.
He's
yes.
one of many.
Like,
sure.
yeah,
Wayne
no, but
Newton
like the
is often
oh no. I'm thinking of the other guy, Wayne Newton. I'm thinking of
There
Wayne
you
Newton.
go. Sure.
That's who I was thinking of. Yeah, continue on, Carrie.
I think I will. Thank you. Anyway, no, we have, we've been approached by a lot of people over the years about, hey, would you want to do a podcast, or could we do a podcast with you guys? And that is always remains a possibility that we could team up with people to do podcasts. But YouTube stuff is going great, by the way. Appreciate everybody being a part of that. Go subscribe, like, all that stuff. YouTube.com/SoonerScoop. It'll take you right there. Also, the SoonerScoop editorial that Eddie runs with all your interviews after games, practice interviews, head coach interviews, things like that. Go check both those pages out and subscribe. But it's gone really well, and we're ready to expand. We're ready to add to the roster. And tonight we're going to go over our kind of first, and I should say the Hoops Report has been a very, very nice addition as well, Bob Przybylo, who's right here with us. But tonight we're going to do a little, I don't know what you would call it, rehearsal, maybe a little demo with our two newest podcast guests, and that will be Isaac Stoops and Joe Castiglione Jr., who I know George... Our own George Stoya and
technically,
Joe.
they'll be hosts.
They will.
Right?
I
guess
George
they won't even technically be guests, right?
Yeah, we're talking about George, Joe Jr., and Isaac all doing their own podcast together that will be broadcast on YouTube. And so I'm really excited about it. I think Joe Jr., he's done some podcasting stuff in the past. I was always really impressed with what he was able to do. I think it was like mainly an Instagram only kind of deal that he was doing. And he'd had some guests on, but we're excited about the type of guests they're going to bring. Just those two and their knowledge and what they're. And it's going to be like a cross-platform deal. It's going to be like Isaac may be doing some stuff with Josh. Joe C is expressed an interest in getting involved in the Hoops Report. So they're going to be all over our different programming that we're doing here at SoonerScoop. So I know Eddie and I are very excited about it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really good, and especially to kind of get an insight from guys that were around, obviously the team during some of the good old days back, when they were playing for a national championship. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and obviously both of them grew up, around
inside
it more than anybody,
Mm-hmm.
else. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see kind of what they're able to create here in the coming, days, weeks, months, years.
And I'll say this: it's not just about being Bob's kid and Joe C's kid. It's. I think they have some talent, and I think they're going to bring a lot to the show. You think about all the guys that Isaac's been around in his football life. We were talking about George Kittle the other day. Like, they still communicate a little bit. And then Joe C. Jr. I mean, heck, We were watching the Iowa State game last night, and I'm thinking like, you get Kellen Sampson on every once in a while. I mean, he knows those guys, and of course he knows you and I. But
sure,
we could always have him on whenever we wanted. But it's just going to be exciting to have another perspective here besides us knuckleheads that you're always hearing from, and I think it's only going to make us better. So really looking forward to it, and looking forward to tonight when we kind of get together for the first time and figure out how this is all going to work. So. There you go. There's our big announcement. Moving on, Bob Przybylo is starting here.
I was going to say, we're waiting on a big announcement, too, from the University of Oklahoma.
A couple. Just a waiting week so far.
Yeah, it's a lot of sitting around waiting for the Zach Alley announcement to come, and I continue to check on that, and I'm just told that it's just a paperwork deal. I noticed Jacksonville State announced they hired a new secondary coach today. I thought that was kind of interesting, or safeties coach today. Makes you wonder, like, okay, how are they hiring people if they don't have a defensive coordinator? Or maybe they have someone that's calling the shots behind the scene. Eddie, I know through channels that Zach's been in Norman, looking at places.
He's looking for houses.
Yeah.
I was even told this morning that he was over at the facility working out at the Switzer Center. So, I mean, he's here.
He's here.
Yeah.
We're just waiting on the announcement to officially happen.
Which, it's him getting his paperwork in, going through all the formal stuff. They do have a regents meeting on Friday. I know we'll talk to George a little bit about that, but I know they're expecting certain coaches to be salaries announced and all that stuff. So there's going to be a lot of stuff coming throughout the week, and that doesn't even include the transfer portal, which I know Josh is probably not. You did the transfer portal YouTube show yesterday. A lot of people have watched that, but I mean, it's I don't want to say hit or miss, but it just seems like OU continues to kind of battle the super NIL programs at every turn, and it's not going that well.
Yeah, I don't know any other way to say that than guys. I mean, and I know fans get upset and mad, but the players aren't any different than most people. They make financial decisions. They do things that are going to set their families up in the best position there. And I know all the rebuttals that we'll hear from that, and I won't go down that road. But yeah, Oklahoma's fighting an uphill battle, and most notably in the Lance Hurd chase, the LSU former 5-star signee in the 2023 class that I think would come in and very instantly be I don't know if a probable starter at left tackle is right, but I mean a very, very likely candidate. Let's put it that way. And if that's the case, if they could land him, I think you start seeing the dominoes of that entire offensive line fall into place. I just think it's a really tough thing to ask, because it sounds like for him to choose Oklahoma, he's going to have to, kind of use I'm going to bet on myself, and I'm going to bet on Bill Bedenbaugh to develop me and kind of make him that next offensive tackle at OU. And there's room for that conversation. But at the same time, I mean, he's a young kid, and there's some big numbers being thrown his way.
It's just kind of unbelievable. And we're obviously looking at it from a probably a little bit of a skewed viewpoint, but Bill Bedenbaugh is about to put first-rounders in back-to-back years at tackle. Like, why wouldn't you take this opportunity, you're walking into a starting spot at the University of Oklahoma? I guess I'm blinded by the fact that there's other factors at play.
Eddie, I would say there are a few things that confuse me more, because I think, and again, this is probably my bias of my appreciation for offensive linemen. I think they're generally pretty smart, pretty savvy guys, and there is sometimes a lack of appreciation to me. And look at what this guy does. Like, look at what he does with offensive linemen, even guys that aren't well known or aren't, people like lump Orlando Brown, and like Orlando Brown was some 5-star recruit. Like, Tennessee basically walked away from Orlando Brown, and Bill believed and said, hey, he can be a guy here, makes him into an All-American, and obviously is having a really nice NFL career, and is making more money almost, monthly than any NIL deal I've ever heard of. So, it's kind of one of those things where you just kind of have to weigh out, are you willing to take that risk now for what could be down the road? And, Oklahoma and Bill Bedenbaugh have the track record to say these things are actually possible.
Look, I think personally, just from everything that I've heard, everything that we hear, you kind of try and put this together. Okay, what's going on? What's happening here? Because it doesn't smell right. Like, as you say, they have the track record of putting guys into the league, of making guys, go to the league where they're going to be all pros. I mean, Creed Humphrey, I know, Lane Johnson was a different time, but still.
Same with Trent Williams.
Yeah. But, Orlando Brown, Creed Humphrey. Anton Harrison had a great year last year or this year. So it's like
Ben Powers
is still, he's a fixture in the league. And it's like, okay, so you have the track record. If you're a football factory for an offensive line, OU's about as close as it gets. This can't just be about money, but maybe it is. This can't just be about OU not wanting to go down that road of having bonus babies in the locker room, as I keep terming them. I think that's part of it too. It's about navigating this thing, and right now you're losing out, and you've got to kind of take a step back and say, how do we fix this? What aren't we doing that's allowing this to happen? And take a hard look inward, because right now it's not working, and you're not navigating the current NIL space to your advantage.
Would it be unfair to say, Josh, too, that it seems like it's one position? And I certainly don't want to say that they need to move on from Bill. It just seems like something has to give at this point, because you're going back to one position that you're continually striking out at.
And you lost a player you had on campus over NIL.
To the same reason. And maybe that's unfair to put everything on Bill with Caden.
I think I'll say this. I wouldn't put it, not any of it, but I would put that more on Brent Venables and just letting that slip through the cracks.
Sure.
And how that all ended up happening. I don't have, I'm not here to accuse anybody of anything, but again, you lost a guy that was on your roster to another school. Something happened there, and you have to examine why did that happen? What could we do different?
And not just another school, a school that is on your schedule in 2024, and a team that's seems to be not going anywhere anytime soon.
And at the same time, Josh, maybe that's that a lot of that I know is why Brent is now going out and hiring his own defensive coordinator. So he not that he's going to oversee. I think if anything, he's going to take more of a back seat on the NIL stuff. Not that he won't be involved or that people won't be involved, but I don't know what's out there or what I can say, but I mean they have a plan, and Brent hiring a defensive coordinator will allow other people to kind of spearhead their NIL efforts and have someone in the program that is used to the NFL and dealing with money and contracts and things like that that will help them out. And I think that's a step, but at the same time you're behind you're behind the eight ball right now.
Yeah, and with what Eddie started with, I mean, this is – guys, we're watching Oklahoma recruit really well on the defensive line. And we know that Brent Venables, the focus is the line of scrimmage. He knows, and we watched Michigan prove it the other night. So there is something to that. There is something to why is the offensive line not where it needs to be? Why is Oklahoma looking right now in a best-case scenario going into the spring with probably 14 scholarship bodies on their offensive line and no immediate sign that it'll jump to 15 with Eddie Pierre-Louis when he gets to campus in the summer. And again, that's if they land Lance Hurd and if they land Terrence Ferguson. Right now they're sitting at 12 with the possible addition of Eddie Pierre, or not the possible, but the addition in the summer. So the numbers are tight. They're not where they need to be. You need to be at 15 to 18. And something has to happen there. I don't know if they're going to have to make some allowances in these NIL situations. And because, I mean, to me, Lance Hurd is a talented enough guy that I almost like, okay, we got to do what we got to do. Very much like the Walter Rouse situation last year, like where you just kind of say, it's got to be what it's got to be, and that guy can really start a domino effect of your whole offensive line improving rapidly. Like you get to make some decisions rather than, well, this guy plays that position and this guy plays that position, and that's all we've got. Like that's all that's going to work, and it gives you some flexibility. So to me, And again, I don't think that's going to happen. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying like, OU's going to go figure this out in the next 24 hours. I'm just saying they've got to start looking at these situations and figuring out what the problem is. And if it's just Bill, if they just deem that, he, for whatever reason, he can't overcome the NIL gap that Oklahoma fights in some of these situations, then they got to find somebody who can. You can't just live with 12 scholarship offensive linemen. That will not work.
I think what we're trying to do here is bring a fresh perspective to Oklahoma's approach with NIL on the offensive line. Just like Enjoy. It's our look around, Enjoy vision, look around, fresh perspective, and the vision inside those coaching offices needs to change. Maybe Enjoy could help, Eddie.
Well, for $400, it would be pretty easy. And all you got to do is you got to go to Enjoy Vision, which is the best laser vision center in Oklahoma City. It's not even close. The combination of mind-blowing technology, experienced eyeball surgeons, and exceptional patient care was life-changing for somebody like myself. What they're doing for the Unofficial 40 listener is giving $400 off LASIK. All you got to do is go to enjoywithme.com, use the promo code U40 if you're so inclined and interested in $400 off of LASIK. That is enjoywithme.com, promo code U40. Enjoy Vision. This is where you lace it.
Appreciate the folks at Enjoy for being such a great sponsor of the pod. By the way, I like to give out compliments. Sometimes I get in trouble for that, for complimenting George on his shirt fits and things. But Eddie, your haircut's fantastic.
Thank you.
You got the beard trimmed.
Midtown Barbers. That's Colston, my guy over there. That's where I led George to. We both get our haircut at the same place.
Man, he's just really trying to be you, isn't he?
It's going to be tough.
Anyway. Go ahead, Josh.
I was going to say, what was that Angelina Jolie movie, Taking Lives, like where she just kept it like assuming other people's personalities and like taking over? It was kind of a single white female.
I saw that Salt movie that she was in, where she was like a Russian agent spy or whatever.
I actually think I've seen that before.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith is fantastic.
I think that's a show that has been on like one of the 20 HBO channels that I have that I ended up watching a little bit of.
You find out that I would love to find out Eddie just has a TV and no cable service. He just watches Tubi over the internet or something.
No, I after last night though, I'm giving serious consideration to adding a third television in the living room at the compound.
Yeah, you got 4 in a room here if you want to come watch.
Yeah, but that's
heavy nights like last night.
Not my couch.
Harder.
Okay, so last night, what was last night?
Big 12 basketball, Josh.
It was
back
Texas,
away.
Oh, it was a super light night for me, so that makes sense. It's all.
By the way,
up.
I want to get to basketball real quick. One last thought on the NIL stuff, and it is this, and this has kind of been this is Brent's prerogative how he wants to run NIL, and I totally support that because you look at all the places that have dumped a bunch of money into NIL and for players. Texas A&M hasn't worked so far. Paid $70 million to get rid of your coach because it went so poorly. Right now, Ole Miss is going to try. We're going to see what happens. Missouri's dumping a lot of money into it. Once Luther Burden is gone, is that team as good? Next year, I don't know. I mean, I would never trade Luther Burden for Theo Weiss. It's a wait and see. I'm trying to think who else has been
Miami.
Miami has been a massive failure. John Ruiz, hey, he gave the money. At least he had the money to give. And here's the thing, Josh. And Eddie, you know this. If Oklahoma really wanted to go out and compete with these people and pay $700,000, $800,000, whatever the number is, I know they could do it. They could pull it off. But I think Brent, and rightfully so, I think he has every right to feel this way. If you get too many of those guys in the locker room, it becomes a problem. It becomes a problem of if this guy's making all this money, does he feel like he's entitled to not practice as hard as everybody else? If he gets yelled at, does he yell back at his coach, bitch, I make more money than you. You don't know what you're talking about. I think it brings a lot of problems, and I think Brent feels that way too, and he doesn't want to have a locker room full of those types of guys that are making almost $1 million when everybody else across from him might be making nothing or $20,000 or whatever.
Credit to him, because if I was in that position, we'd be throwing money at whoever and however. It doesn't matter because the situation is so dire.
But if you're at Missouri, you're at Ole Miss, they're so hungry they've never had this stuff before. They want it so bad. Oklahoma has a track record of being able to do it the way that Alabama's done it, or Georgia has, or Michigan.
Guys, this feels like one of those things that because NIL's new, everyone assumes these things. Do we really think that Alabama's locker room didn't know the freshmen were coming in with full wads in their pocket before NIL existed? Like, this has been happening forever, and everybody acts like, oh, no, now they're new money. And, like, Walter Rouse is probably one of the bigger portal purchases, if you want to put it in those terms, that OU's made. Walter Rouse is the only offensive lineman that played in the bowl game. Andrew Rame, who OU recruited, did not play. Tyler Guyton did not play. Walter Rouse, the hired gun, he hung around and played. And because OU needed him and he knew it. And it didn't do him anything to play in that game.
I mean, Walter Rouse.
Yes.
Yeah, Bob got the video of him after the game with Chavis. Was it Chavis that he was
I think that's just I think that's just one of those things that, and don't get me wrong, in some cases it's absolutely right. We saw A&M burn to the ground, but there were people at A&M that were like, you're taking guys you shouldn't be taking here. Like there was a risk and they knew it. To just assume every guy that's worth money in the portal is going to be a cancer in your locker room, like that's not fair. Like they're worth what they're worth. Guys, we can bag on Caden Green all we want. Caden Green's a nice kid. Like he didn't do any. Like I get that people don't like how that was handled, and I probably not the way I would have handled it. But it doesn't make him a bad kid because he went out and got money. Like that's what all of us would do in the situation. Now, again, maybe we handle it differently, but we can't say we don't make monetary choices just like these guys do.
It's a question of, how things have been done in the past and how they're going to be done in the future. Because now all of a sudden you have, and I've heard coaches already blaming agents for why things are the way they are. When you have an agent involved, his job is to get you the most money that he can get you. It's not okay, what's the best culture for my guy to be in, or what's the best environment, who's going to raise him the right way. Like, that's not the consideration is who's going to give us the most money. And you're a mercenary. Yep. And I think it's one of those things when you come at someone with a hostile attitude, they come back at you with a hostile attitude. There's no middle ground here. It's just we're here for one reason and one reason only. And all of a sudden, the relationships and it's just like with Walter Rouse, like the personality of a kid, how good of a person he is, all that stuff doesn't matter all of a sudden, and it's unsettling for a lot of coaches. Everybody's got to figure out how to deal with it.
So, Josh, we get the story about Hurd. So, what's the deal with Ferguson? It felt pretty good coming off the visit last weekend. Is it the same type of deal, or is it something totally different?
Yeah, and I got woke up shortly before we started recording, so it'll be a few hours between everybody being able to read that and hearing this in the pod. I think that is really progressing. Like, that feels like that's heading in the right direction. It feels like it's going to come down to Florida State and Oklahoma. I talked with Eddie and George on, I guess that was Tuesday. Was it Monday or Tuesday?
Yeah, it was yesterday.
It was Tuesday. And I talked about Alabama really being in the running. Talking to some sources at Alabama, I don't think they really think he's coming back. I think it really is Florida State and Oklahoma. And I know when you talk to Alabama people, there's this, I don't know how hard they were pushing for him. From Oklahoma's side of things, I very much get the impression that they believe Alabama wants him back. Like, it would really like to. So this isn't a guy that, kind of like you talk, and I've heard Brent talk about it, and this I agree completely with him on. You've got to make sure it's a guy that isn't leaving because he's a problem. Like a guy they don't want around anymore, a guy they processed out, whatever it may be. That's not the case with Terrence Ferguson. Alabama would like to have him back. I think they think there's a chance he could be a very real, role for him next year. Maybe it's as a starter. I don't know. But this is a good player, and I like him on tape. So, again, with him, I think it's going to be decided maybe Friday, probably at the latest over the weekend. But I think Oklahoma's a contender there. I really do. I think if it was Florida State, which I think some people felt when he left Tallahassee that was the case, he'd have made the call. I mean, he's got to get to campus and get enrolled and that kind of thing. And I will say, when you talk about schools who have done a lot of NIL work and how many failures there have been, you have to give credit to Florida State. They have found a way to build through the portal and do it in a really successful rate and seem to have built a pretty good situation. But when it goes badly, we see what we saw against Georgia. I mean, those guys were just like, we're good here. Like we've done what we needed to do.
Yeah, and you just talking about that, I think about Florida State. Like they're clearly their program with guys that are going there to make it to the NFL. I mean, you look at their bowl game and the opt-outs. It's like they have, and that really, you wipe away all the, and maybe this is the change that I'm talking about, how people have to change and warp their minds. Not warp, but, just look at things differently. I mean, OU spent so much time sending out OLU stuff, and these are our guys in the NFL, and this is how much money they're making. Like, this has always been about bringing in kids, developing them, and helping them make a really good living at the next level. So now you add the money into it. You kind of turned me around, Josh. I'm kind of like, so what? Yeah, they're getting paid since they're here. Manage that shit. Like, if you feel like that's going to tear up the locker room, manage it. You got the Soul program. You make it known that we don't ever talk about money in the locker room, that we don't ever pit money against another player. Like those things can get you kicked off of the team. And, just because someone's getting paid a lot of money doesn't mean you can't structure a contract that says conduct detrimental to deemed detrimental to the team can void this NIL deal.
Absolutely. And guys, it reminds me, real quick, Bob, I promise, I know I've talked a lot here. It reminds me a lot of Randy Moss telling the story of him going from the Raiders to the Patriots. And in the Raiders, he was seen as like, oh, he's out of the game, like he's past it, he's not that guy anymore. And then he goes to New England, and there is a structure, and it is, you do things a certain way, and Bill Belichick has respect. Tom Brady's there. There were enough people in that locker room to check him and be like, hey, man, you're great, but you're going to be part of this or you can get out. Like, and that was, to me, you can't have a roster full of hired guns. Like, I fully get that. But in a situation like this where you have a clear need and you have a rare chance to take a player that can really elevate your position group, I think you have to be willing to be flexible in that situation to say, this guy can help us. He's going to make our team better. And what's better for morale than a good team? Like, winning games seems to help a locker room a lot. Having
depth when your starters go down. I mean, that's going to be the difference between a 8-win team and a 11-win team in the SEC. I mean, it made a difference this year with Gentry Williams. Like, he goes down. If Kenai Walker is not trying to cover that receiver in the Kansas game late in the game, and Gentry Williams, they probably win that game. So, I mean, right now, OU is in that position. Even though they're better, they still can lose a starter that can derail their chances of winning a game. And on the offensive line, that's exactly where they're headed for next year. All right, we can move on. I know Bob is here. We need to talk a little hoops. Eddie is he's like a walking Kemper Arena right now. Like, he's getting everyone fired up for basketball in the office. Of course, the cheese that he has on each game kind of gets him fired up as well.
I don't gamble. It's illegal in the state of Oklahoma.
I know, Governor. If you pass the sports gambling laws, people like Eddie wouldn't have to do underhanded things to make money for a living. Because they're doing it anyway. You might as well just pass it. Not everybody like George Stoya is driving across the border to go to Kansas to place his bets. But, no, last night was a big night in conference. It was a little nostalgic seeing Kelvin Sampson back in Hilton Coliseum, and it kind of turned out very similar to his days at Oklahoma.
You had some desperate teams. You had Iowa State, you had Texas. Teams are like, we cannot go 0-2. And I think we'll get that same type of vibe from TCU against the Sooners tonight, because it's just these teams are so good, but they could be looking at 0-2 starts, and all of a sudden that uphill climb trying to get to a Big 12 championship, you're only a week into the season, you already feel deflated.
Well, and TCU barely lost controversially to Kansas in Fog Allen last weekend, so they're a good team, and going to TCU is going to be. Jamie Dixon's done a great job with that program. I mean,
it's unbelievable what he's done with the roster just in terms of all the Big 12 guys that are on that team, whether it be the Micah Peavy kid or the Ernest Uday kid from Kansas, the big guy that's going to, it's going to be interesting to see how Oklahoma is able to stay out of foul trouble tonight. Sam Godwin and John Hughley, and then obviously Hunter Dickinson coming up on Saturday and Lawrence. It's a really good conference. I think that you look at what you saw last night too, and getting what Texas did out of Dylan Dessou with the 33 points. I thought Texas played really well last night, and Cincinnati hung with them. I mean, every bit. They probably should have won the game, whether if it not for Max Asmus making a kind of a ridiculous shot on the baseline. So I think Cincinnati's really good. I think BYU is 0-2 in the conference, and they could be really good if they're shooting the ball well. They kind of survived a scare last night, or Baylor survived a scare last night, went on a little run at the end of the game. So it's a lot of fun right now in Big 12. Every night that you get games, even tonight, Kansas going down to Orlando to take on Central Florida. I think they're only like a 6.5, 7-point favorite. I know that number's moved a little bit throughout the morning. So it should be a really good night and a really good test to see kind of where this Oklahoma thing is.
Yeah, and the two of the teams that are 2-0 are Kansas State and Texas Tech.
Yeah.
This is just going to be so deep. Every week it's going to change, and it's just going to be about the mental toughness to not let one loss turn into 2 or 3, and we'll see what happens with OU tonight.
I think there's 3 teams that we know kind of the book rolling right now. West Virginia, Oklahoma State, and Kansas State are not good basketball teams. Kansas State maybe can climb out of that, but Oklahoma State and West Virginia are the 2 worst teams in the league right now. I don't know. We talked a lot about it this morning, but Oklahoma State is borderline unwatchable on the road right now.
Those are gimme games. Those are the ones that, when we talk about hold serve at home and then get some on the road, you go to Morgantown, Stillwater this year, you've got to win every single time.
No doubt about it. And, I think that just looking back at Saturday, Bob, it was for probably the first time in a couple years, truly, that you saw an Oklahoma team be able to go from that, scare or lose the lead and kind of resettle themselves and be able to make some plays and win a game.
Yeah, it's 58-57. 4 minutes ago, Iowa State now is their second lead of the game, and OU goes on a 14-2 run to put it away. And it's not Javian McCollum as the scorer, but as the passer. 3 straight possessions, 3 straight assists. And what Sam Godwin did with the heart and hustle, as Eddie has posted on social media, I mean, that was just a special run that went from down 58-57 to up 64-58, and Lloyd Noble was rocking again.
Thought it was important, too, and we talked to Porter about this yesterday, that, they after they fall down, they come out of that timeout and they drew up a play for Otega Owe, who was having a terrible night from the field, a frustrating night, I guess is probably better said. But they were still able to find a way. You get him to the foul line, he knocks down a couple, and then that ignited what was the 14-2 run. And
that's been something Porter's preached, in all 3 years, but especially with this year. Your scoring can't dictate everything else you do. And when you get older guys like a Suarez or Darthard or even Otega, now it's a sophomore, those guys, if the ball doesn't go in the hoop, it doesn't affect how they play the rest of the game.
Yeah, I think just watching that opener against Iowa State, Iowa State looks to be a pretty good basketball team. The freshman from Wisconsin with the Slavian name or whatever. I mean, what's his name?
Milan.
Is it Milan Machilovic or something like that?
Machilovic, I think.
He's going to be a problem in the Big 12. 6'8".
Really
I know he only had 11 points last night, but he had probably the 4 biggest points for Iowa State there in the closing time.
But, I mean, the one thing I look at with this Oklahoma team is just the wear-down factor. Like, Javian McCollum, you could see him kind of getting beat up as the season goes along. But just the bodies that, Hughley's probably going to be in foul trouble just about every game. Godwin will be in that boat as well. What happens when those guys have foul trouble consistently in this conference? Because you're going to have like a Suarez in there kind of battling, or just guys taking their turns trying to rebound. Like it just seems awful.
It's going to be rough, and I'm going to go back to that game we're never watching, but Central Arkansas, you needed to win by 30 so Luke Northweather could get more time out there so that you would feel confident putting
you wish they had a couple more guys off the bench in that rotation.
It'd be a rotation of 10. I mean, it would be 10. It would be Luke, it would be Cade and Cooper. If they stretched it out to 10, those are the two guys that are going to be added to this bunch. But you saw Luke come in against North Carolina, deer in the headlights, gets blocked, plays a minute. Didn't matter, Hughley, Godwin, how much foul trouble they were in the second half. Like, can't go back to Luke. And then because you didn't dominate those lower-level teams in Monmouth and Central Arkansas, Cooper and Northweather didn't get that mop-up duty time to start feeling good about themselves once again. So now you're at a rotation of 8 and seeing how it works out. You mentioned McCollum. That's what second half, like, this guy has no legs left. He played 38 minutes in his first game in the Big 12, and it's like a rude awakening. This is what you're going to have to do for the next 2 months.
Well, it's exciting. I mean, one last season in the Big 12, and like you said, seeing BYU and Houston added to it certainly as a couple of really good teams. We'll see about UCF. I mean, what they bring to the table. I don't know.
I don't think they're very good.
They don't have a Taco Fall.
No, they don't. They don't. Although I think what's his name is it? It's not Tommy Amaker that's down there anymore. I thought one of their coaches was kind of a familiar name, but I think he's moved on since then.
Oh, Dawkins?
Is it Dawkins? Is that who it is at Central Florida?
Because
you played it last year, right?
A couple
Or 2
years ago. Yeah,
that's right.
Yep.
Okay.
Only we had the internet.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. The other team that I watched a ton of last night, and it just happened to be the game that was on ESPN, I think Auburn is really good. Like, really, really good.
Johnny
I don't know if they're
coach.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't know if they're like a Final Four type team, but I kind of put Auburn in the same level of TCU that checks a lot of boxes when it comes to making a run in March or putting something together.
So you're already moving on to the SEC scouting?
He did.
I did a little bit last night. I watched the A&M Auburn game.
We need to talk, maybe.
It was on ESPN. It was a good game. And Auburn covered.
And the Aggies are 0-2 in the SEC after looking like they look pretty good. They're non-conference.
I think it's Kentucky, Tennessee, and Auburn that are the top 3 in the SEC, and then it's everybody else.
And so by winning against Iowa State, if you go 0-2 this week, the sky is not falling.
Sure.
If you lose TCU, you lose to Kansas. That's fine. Then you get West Virginia at home next Wednesday. Pick yourself back up. That's why we mentioned how imperative it was to beat the Cyclones, get a quad 1 win, and now Iowa State makes you look better by beating Houston. It's like you're on the right track still.
So tonight, TCU, we will have a hoops report on YouTube tomorrow with Bob Przybylo. You two are headed down to Lawrence this weekend to go see the final battle in the fog. Wouldn't it be something if they could pull that one out last time?
It really would, and it's what's
Do
funny.
it before Terry Evans dies, please.
It would be on par with everything else that happens around here because we won't have video of it.
I know. Okay, we can only lodge so many grievances in one show.
It's a fact. It's not a. It's
Eddie's not
it's
allowed
something
to shoot
of a
video.
complaint.
Yeah.
It's like a college football.
And it's
playoff
not just
game.
me; it's everybody. But it's kind of a archaic rule that I find to be a little bit. I don't know.
Stop killing media companies, all right?
I just don't understand it, but that's okay. They got me a seat. I'll be sat next to Bob. Are we like third deck?
Yeah.
So it's pretty high up there.
We're gonna
so
be
it's going to
pretty
be like
high up
watching
there.
a game from Foster Pavilion. I have another complaint to lodge with Baylor. I love Foster Pavilion. It looks awesome. The camera angle it makes Gallagher-Iba's old view look like really close. Like you
might as well just be a sky
It's
cam.
almost distracting. I was talking to Ryan Chapman about this morning. It's almost distracting because you see so many people that it's hard to like focus on the court.
On the basketball. All right.
I really love the idea of Eddie sitting up in press row. Like I want him to dress up like Grantland Rice. Like I want him to have like a bowler hat on. Like I want the whole thing, Eddie.
I believe last time
we might write something. I don't know. It depends.
Last time he had to do that was 2011 Florida State, I believe.
Watch a game that outside of the playoffs, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That I went to that I didn't shoot video, yeah. Or I guess there's some NCAA tournament stuff mixed in there.
Sure, yeah.
But
The funny thing is, they played well at Kansas.
Yeah.
You think about
last 2 years.
Jordan Goldwire had that shot for overtime. It's not like they've been overwhelmed in the fog when they didn't even have as good of a team as we believe they have now. So I don't think they'll get run out of the building. But, man, all of a sudden you see 1993 and you think of all the near calls that they've had, including, of course, Buddy in 2016. It's like, that's a lot to overcome.
I'm just like the old man now that, like, all the NCAA tournaments I covered, I was sitting right there. Like Blake Griffin, like, almost landed in my lap at one point, and those days are gone. Now I look at the last Final Four you guys went to. You were blocked by
oh my goodness.
You were blocked by the TNT set and like Charles Barkley. And
It was a terrible. It's a terrible setup, but yeah, it is what it is. Pretty good night in the college basketball world. It was also crazy that 1 and 2 got beat last night.
Yeah,
I think Fred Hoiberg's Nebraska team's kind of fun.
the
Japanese kid,
basketball's
the
going.
left-handed guy, he is unbelievable.
and that's a brand new arena that they have. I mean, like
Somewhat, yeah. I think it's probably
4
like,
years old. Maybe.
Yeah, something like that.
But yeah, I mean, compared to Lloyd Noble,
Sure.
Come on.
Yeah, 100%.
Josh, are you sucked in? Did we suck you into the basketball world? Are you ready to join Eddie in his crusade to make everyone a college basketball fan?
No, Eddie didn't reach me, but I'm still here, Eddie. You can still keep preaching. That's fine. I don't want you to lose your momentum, man.
It's fine. I wouldn't have given you the Green Bay cover today anyways. The game already was played.
What?
Green
right.
Bay, IUPUI. You don't miss those games.
All right. Bob will be around. He's just waiting on that Zach Alley story to punch written out there. Get the quotes. We're all just wanting it to happen as soon as possible. Also, any transfer portal news, he'll be on top of. So.
We got one down. We got Jake Roberts to get in, but now we're just waiting for everybody else.
All right, Bob, I appreciate it. You can send young George on in for his punishment time as we continue on the unofficial 40. Josh, let me just ask you. I mean, you've kind of, I don't know that we've really talked since San Antonio, at least not on the pod, but just the overall circuit that you went on, Orlando, San Antonio. I know you had a funeral, unfortunately, in the middle of some of that too, but kind of leading impressions coming out of the All-Star practices.
I will say I think Oklahoma fans have a lot to be excited about. I have gone to Under Armour in years past, and that really was kind of where the predominant focus was for Oklahoma, with 5 guys down there playing. There wasn't any guy there that looked out of his depth. That I thought everybody played well. David Stone was dominant at times, had a big play in the game that a lot of people have pointed to. Devon Mitchell looks different. I mean, he's just not built like the other tight ends. He is so big and filled out, and he's gonna. I think we talked about it with Eddie and George. Like he probably needs to lean up a little bit. He's probably gotten a little soft in certain areas, but we know what Jerry Schmidt does. Like we know what Jerry Schmidt does. He's going to be just fine. And then, you just kind of run down the list. Jaden Hardy is a guy that I would say of all the guys down there, he was the one that you would say, well, he doesn't overwhelm me physically. Like I don't look at him and just am like, wow. But it was kind of the same case with Peyton Bowen down there last year, where you looked at a guy like Jacoby Johnson and you're like, well, that's what you want it to look like. But Peyton's, the guy that's playing a lot as a freshman and that kind of thing. And Hardy has some of that same stuff where he knows what his game is. He knows what he is. He knows what he's not. And I just like him. I think he's a guy that kind of flies under the radar. And I don't know why. I mean, he's a guy that 3 or 4 years ago would have been probably Oklahoma's highest defensive signing. And now he's just kind of one of the guys. But and I feel bad now that I'm running the list. I don't want to leave anybody out.
What'd you think
the 2 offensive linemen? Oh, go ahead, Eddie.
Oh, just with James Nesta. What'd you think about, because the weirdness that came with the late offer to get into the All-American game down in San Antonio? You saw him practice a little bit. He's a little bit skinnier than I was imagining. Is that kind of a bad way to put it? He's a big guy. Don't get me wrong. And when you were talking to him about kind of his build versus what Danny was, very, very similar. If you go back and look at what Danny looked like in high school.
I would say James is more physically developed than Danny was. Danny might be a little bigger in frame than James was. A little like kind of one of those deals where you knew on Danny, like it's going to come in. Obviously, with his dad, also Steve being a big guy too. So like you kind of thought genetics will take over here at some point. With James, what was interesting is I don't think you're wrong, Eddie, in that he's a little different in body type than I expected. Like I kind of thought he was going to be, and I'm not comparing as a player because I kind of made this comparison and I already hate it. But like Dan Cody is a high school kid, like a 6'4", 190-pound kid that's real stretched out and that kind of thing. So I expected him to be lean. He's like, you can tell he spent some time in the weight room. Like his arms, he's big, like big shoulders, big arms. Like you're like, okay, I didn't see that coming. But talking to him and, first of all, if you haven't gone and watched the YouTube editorial, the SoonerScoop editorial on YouTube, go to that channel, watch the James Nesta interview, and watch him talk about getting that late invite where he just basically, it was a whirlwind. Like, hey, you're invited to the game. 2 days later, he's on a plane. Like, I mean, it just happened very, very fast for him. And, he really, you could tell he was a kid that was just soaking it up, just couldn't believe the moment he was getting to have and really enjoyed that whole situation. But I liked him. And I think now that I see him, I see more of the pure linebacker. I thought he was going to be kind of a stand-up edge guy, kind of would play, at times with his hand in the dirt. That's not what he's going to be. He's going to be a linebacker. He'll probably be a will. And he talked in the interview about how much he's looking forward to just working under Danny Stutzman, learning from him, and, just really taking that whole year to soak it up to gather everything he can from a guy, like you said, Eddie, that has a lot of physical similarities.
What about, outside of that, I mean, we haven't really talked a lot about portal and guys, Oklahoma and Dalen Smothers ended up at NC State. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, real quick, just in terms of the All-Star stuff, did you talk about Eugene Brooks and Daniel Akinkunmi?
No, and I'll be as brief as we know I'm capable of being. With Brooks and I
only laugh at that because the scheduled 15-minute portal report yesterday that ended up 35 minutes.
I did the same to Braden Gall yesterday. He was like, I need you for like 20 minutes. It went like 36 or something. And he was like, I'm sorry that went so long. I'm like, it's not you, dude. It has nothing to do with you, Braden. So anyway, with Akinkunmi and Brooks, obviously Akinkunmi's already there. I've talked to some people. It sounds like the reviews are good. I think his body type is just unique. I had actually heard someone tell me that he had a body fat content that was more similar to a linebacker than an offensive lineman. So I thought that was kind of interesting. He's a really well put together dude.
I'm sure they take care. We need to talk to him more about the whole NFL Academy thing. Like exactly how that, because it was like a place he lived at, right? Like it was almost like a boarding school. So
that is my understanding of it.
They probably had nutritionists and all that stuff working with him while he was there.
Yep. I mean, and again, like the coaches he's working with, those are NFL guys. I mean, like he was getting, frankly, better coaching than probably anybody in Oklahoma's class, save for David Stone and Jaden Jackson, who were also working with guys with NFL backgrounds. So, but with I would say Akinkunmi was one of those guys. He checked a lot of boxes for me. Like I was interested to see what that was going to look like when he got out there with real guys. He's fine. He's going to be fine. I think in time he could be really good. Might end up the best offensive lineman out of this class as far as projectability, like a guy that might be at the Senior Bowl someday or something like that. Eugene Brooks, though, BJ, whatever you want to call him, he was the surprise of camp for me. Like that, I thought that dude, that looks like a guy that can help Oklahoma next year, and I really didn't have that on my bingo card for what I was going to see. But if you told me that by mid-season next year he's Oklahoma's starting center, I would not be shocked. Like I think that is entirely possible. He's going to have to learn a lot. He's going to have to gather a lot, but he's a smart kid. He comes from a good program. My stock of him went way, way up over the course of a couple of days there in Orlando. Just watching him and how he just looks so under control. It kind of reminded me, and I hate to make this comparison, but it kind of reminded me of Creed Humphrey. When you would watch him in one-on-one drills when he was in high school, Creed just never looked bothered, and that's what you saw with Eugene Brooks as well. where he was just kind of always under control of the rep and the situation. And I watched him for 2 days go against a really good defensive line group, and no one really gave him trouble.
All right. So yeah, I mean, in like you said, you can go to the SoonerScoop editorial page, watch all those interviews with those guys, especially from the Under Armour. And then, was there anybody besides Nesta? I'm trying to think.
Zion Raggins, as well as was Taylor Tatum down there in San Antonio?
He showed up late. He didn't actually participate because he's still recovering.
Okay,
I think it
but
was.
he was
I can't
on
remember.
the
It's a
team.
hand or a wrist or something.
He was nominated to play in the game. He just couldn't play because of an injury.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah. He sat out because of injury. Same. Well, I don't technically know why Nigel Smith wasn't there, but I didn't see any Nigel Smith while I was down there either. So he may have showed up later in the week. I don't know what the story was because my expectation was he was going to be there. It just didn't happen. But yeah, Taylor and Eddie, kind of to follow up in obviously an area you have a lot of interest and expertise, is both Nesta and Tatum very excited about the baseball future. Nesta's actually going to take part in spring practice with the baseball team. He's going to work with both, and I didn't even know that was possible. I thought that was you had to go through a semester with your
Yeah, if you were it was you had to play the sport that you had the scholarship for first before you could play the other one.
Didn't Mario Williams play though?
He was around, but I don't think that he never played in a game or anything like that. He was around
practicing.
the program.
Yeah.
He was out there. Yeah, he was practicing. I guess would probably be the best way to say it. And the same with James Nesta, as he talked about with you, Josh. I don't think that the plan isn't for him to be in the, he's not a weekend rotation guy in the Big 12 or anything.
No. I don't think he even could.
No,
honestly, I don't think that
correct.
could work. Yeah, but I didn't even know he could practice with the team. Like, I thought you had to take part your first semester with whoever you were on scholarship with, and that's why the baseball team couldn't do things like that. But I don't know if that
We'll
rule's
have to check
changed.
into
It might even be we can check in on it. It might even be a situation that you're not officially practicing, but hey, you happen to live in Norman. You want to use Skip Johnson as your pitching coach? You can come over to the bullpen and throw.
Either that or Skip just showed everybody pictures of all the big game that he's been killing during the offseason.
He killed a big deer. He put on Twitter yesterday.
It was massive.
And before the NCAA gets up in arms about what we've just said, Eddie goes over there and trains with Skip as well, at least twice a week. So I've
seen the batting
open to
practice.
everyone
There's no
kind of
training
thing.
going on.
I'm pitching now.
It's still on my phone.
I think I have it. I'm pitching now. I'm up to 65 fastball.
That's not very good.
It's like you're the opposite of rookie of the year.
I need to break
they're
my
going to
arm.
see the heat, and then
I just need to break my arm.
Exactly.
Hang out with Chet Stedman.
I mean, you got to come up with something to one up George on his basketball stuff.
Baseball is right around the corner.
By the way,
as
I was a
softball.
catcher. You can call me. I'll come out and catch.
Pause again.
That'd be quite the scene.
There's too many things running through my head now. We have to move on. George Stoy is here. How you doing, George?
I'm good. You guys did all the NIL talk without me, which was good. I thought the NIL discussion was really good.
Well, there's a lot of stuff going on. Did you see some of the reporting from On3 today about what's going on with Charlie Baker and all this?
I did not.
Some interesting stuff. Here's the thing. No proposals are out there still for schools to be able to do the NIL transactions. They're still having to rely on third parties, which there's all kinds of stuff out there about how this is going to be reported. The deal's going to go into a database, but it all seems voluntary. So any stuff going on underneath the table, that's what I want to know about. If you're paying an offensive lineman $700,000, what's he doing to actually earn that money?
Starting at left guard on
I
Saturday.
was about to say play
That's
football.
not what NIL is, though. So it's
We've moved on past that, though, right?
Well, it's coming back into focus with all this stuff.
Sure.
If you're going to have
That
to
they're
report
gonna-
exactly
sure.
what your
I
deals are
think-
and what they're for. And
I think my biggest question, and you guys kind of answered it earlier, is it a situation where OU doesn't have the money, or is it a situation OU doesn't want to pay the money, or is it a situation where boosters don't realize that they need to be paying more money?
I would go 2 and 3 more so than 1. They have the money. I think
they could get the money if they asked for it.
Sure.
I think that's the best way to put it.
But I think that it goes back to something that Brent said from day one in terms of being a relationship-driven program as opposed to a transactional program. And I think that he has some principles that he's just not going to back down on. And in the short term, kind of sounds like a bad deal. I don't think that's the way to go. But he has a vision for the program and what he wants to do. And I think that the one thing that he could stand on is being able to say that with what we've known of the culture over the last 2 years, it's very, very solid.
I think what Dylan told you guys, Dylan Gabriel, what he told you guys, if you implement it, it solves all of this. Come up with a free agent system. At the end of the year, you tell the players you negotiate your best deal with him. Then he has an opportunity to go out into the marketplace and have someone match it or exceed it. And then they come back one last time and say, here's the best offer I've got. If you'll match this, I'll stay here. If you don't, I'm going to go there. That eliminates all this stuff.
You just got to get the two sides, though, to come to an agreement that that's the way to go, because the colleges and the universities are never going to be, and athletic departments, they're always going to fall back on this idea that these guys are student athletes.
I think it's going to be interesting to see, because you have these schools that are paying a lot of money, like in Ole Miss, Missouri, Tennessee, but so far those programs haven't. I mean, it's not like they're winning national championships. I mean, is Michigan out here dropping millions of dollars? I have no idea, but Michigan and Washington just competed for the national title, and I don't hear anything about them just being big players in NIL.
They paid Blake Corum to stay, and that's kind of what they do, is they pay guys to stay.
Right.
They're not really out there doing what Ole Miss is doing.
That's my thing, is if Ole Miss goes out and they win the national title next year, which, if they've gone out and recruited really well in the portal, they went and got maybe some of the best players in the portal, then yes.
They got all the best players in the portal.
Then go replicate that, and all of a sudden OU looks, stupid for not paying all these guys. But if they don't, then this whole formula of, well, we're just going to pay a ridiculous amount of money for all these guys, then I don't know if that's always the right way for success. I think the argument for Oklahoma is there is 1 to 2 guys every single portal semester that you should say, screw it, we need to pay an absurd amount of money for this guy. And I think Lance Hurd falls into that category, especially considering where the offensive line 100%.
Is. Sorry, George. Didn't mean to interrupt you. I just... To me, again, like, you got to pick your spots. I'm not saying you build your roster this way, but I think the Ole Miss thing is interesting because, guys, we also have to remember, like, yeah, okay, they're not winning national titles. Who expects Ole Miss to win national titles?
Correct.
Like, they're playing above any other era we've ever seen at Ole Miss, and they're doing it largely built through the portal. Like, Michigan, they didn't, but we expect more of Michigan than we do of Ole Miss. I think that's reasonable to say. What I will say, and I'd be interested to hear your guys' thoughts, how much does the way Michigan has done this, and the fact that Jim Harbaugh just said, I'm going to do this my way, I'm not going to give in, I'm going to do it culturally the way I want to do, I don't care what anybody thinks about it, and then he goes and wins a national title largely built on kind of what Brent talks about, relationships and having the trust in his guys and having a staff that's continuous and all those kind of things. How much do you think that just fortifies Brent's resolve to continue operating the way we have, because it can work, it can be successful?
100%.
Here's the thing, but also you have to wonder, you have to ask yourself, okay, can Alabama, Georgia, and Michigan continue stockpiling players in this system that they once did? And it seems like Georgia just lost a quarterback to USC. And it was a bidding war. It was clearly a bidding war, and Georgia's like, we're Georgia. We're not going to do that. And I think Oklahoma kind of has that same attitude. Alabama has a very similar attitude. At what point does this new system or era chip away at their traditional powers? The guys that were able – good God, look at the players Michigan has had drafted on defense the last 4 years. They provided the league with half of their defense. They've kind of replaced Alabama as the people providing the most defensive talent to the NFL. And I would say, wouldn't you say, Josh, in the last 3-4 years? Go back to the.
I don't know about
Peppers
replacing, but they're definitely up there on that plane. And the crazy thing is the Graham kid that was great in that game, and the Garrett kid, the big kid that had the sack on Penix. I think it's Garrett. I think that's right. They're both sophomores. They're coming back. So all that they're going to lose, like Junior Colson, who's an outstanding linebacker, he'll go to the draft. Like, they're going to lose some great pieces. They really are. But they've got plenty coming back, one of which is Derek Moore, who our guy Jamar Kane had headed to Norman before everything went sideways in following Bedlam a couple years ago. So,
well, and I mean, just look at Hurd.
There's a lot they like.
Look at Hurd. Look at Ferguson. Guys that both their teams love, but they're young and they're behind better players. Like, it's going to chip away at the depth that Georgia and Alabama and LSU and everybody else has had.
100%. I mean, guys, you can look around. I mean, Alabama is losing guys they don't want to lose. Georgia lost a whole mess of guys. And I'm not saying that Georgia won't replace them with other talented guys, but let's just be real. Like, your depth is better if it's a really talented junior than it is a really talented freshman. Like, that's just the way that goes.
I think it also probably over the next couple of years, and as we see college football completely change on and flip on its head with the 12-team playoff, no longer are you battling to get a spot on one of these 4 teams that are going to make the playoff, as opposed to it's very expansive now. You can go to an Ole Miss and still realistically play in a national championship or play for a national championship if you just make the 12-team playoff.
That's true, but I think that it's going to be so hard to win the 12-team playoff versus obviously the 4-team playoff, because you are going to have more depth than ever before.
100%.
To play the amount of games that it will take to win a national title is going to be extremely difficult. And one of the reasons, I mean, Michigan lost their best, people forget, Michigan lost their best offensive lineman against Ohio State, and they just replaced him like it was nothing. That guard, Zinter or whatever his name was.
There's a clip going around with PJ Fleck talking after their game in Minneapolis earlier this year, and he basically said that this was the deepest Michigan, or just deepest football team that he had played. He said something like, and I don't know what the score of the Michigan-Minnesota game was, but he said that he was told after he was walking off the field after the game that Michigan brought 75 guys and 74 played in the game. Now, a lot of those, I would say 30 to 40 of those guys probably were playing in the fourth quarter, that kind of stuff. But Michigan was just, they were impressive. It was very, very impressive. And like you said, Josh, it's incredible that as much talk as there has been out there that, these teams need to get to the run and gun and spread everything out, and you're putting up 700 yards of offense a game, they completely did it the exact opposite way with power football.
Absolutely. And guys, the thing that I think it's fun and exciting, because you guys know I've been a big 12-team playoff guy. I'm very into that idea. Is there would if I said it's going to be at least 10 years before there's another national champion that goes undefeated?
Yes.
I think that's happening. Like, I don't think that's going to be the deal anymore.
I completely agree. There was a lot of talk on Monday night about, is Michigan going to be the last 15-0 team for the foreseeable future? And I think that that's very much the case.
Let me ask you guys this question. Is OU closer to winning a national title this year, or maybe not this year, next year, whatever, than they were in 2021, Lincoln Riley's last year?
I would say yes, by default of it being open more. Like, you don't have to win the conference, no doubt about it, or you're not playing for a national championship.
I mean, I just think that team, that 2021 team, they just weren't there offensively yet. I mean, 2017 probably the closest. I mean,
defensively,
not probably, but definitely. But the defense was terrible. The offense overcame it. Defense was a little better in 2021, but still not a national championship quality team on either side. Really, I didn't think.
I don't know.
Yeah,
it's an interesting conversation that. I do think that they're a better football team than maybe they were in those past years.
I think more capable just from this year than 21, just because fundamentally they had a defense. Whereas still in 2021, they were floundering a little bit. Where I think you have a game. Now, If it's against like a Michigan where they're just physically going to dominate you if you're this Oklahoma team. I mean, but the defensive line was better this year than it had been in any time that Lincoln Riley was here, unless you want to count, Perrion Winfrey and Isaiah Thomas. They were about as good as they did during Lincoln's time. And I think Neville was there for 1 year, wasn't he? But he was basically one guy.
Yes. I think that's right. Was Neville's last year 20?
I mean, Billy Bowman himself made the safety position
He went out the
better.
same year as Kenneth Murray, so their last year would have been the 2019 season.
Okay.
2019.
That's right.
Yep.
But, I mean, Billy Bowman makes this secondary better than anything that they had in those years.
Well, you would give Oklahoma a puncher's chance against almost anyone because of that defense. Like, they can hang around in games. Like,
Yeah, they're not a
we know
dominant
under
defense,
Riley,
but they'll keep you in them.
Yes. Like, under Riley, if the game was going to be in the 20s, Oklahoma's probably not going to win that game. They just were. It wasn't going to work out for them. But they had to win everything in the 40s, and that was the only way they knew how to play a game and how to win. I think this group, if the chips fell right, yeah, they could win a game in the upper 20s against, Georgia, Alabama, something like that. I wouldn't pick that. I don't think that's what's going to happen if they play them. But there's a path for that. With the Riley teams, like if they couldn't drop 40 on you, they were going to have real trouble.
I think you put this defense on that 2021 team, they might play in the national championship game, but I don't think they win it. If you put this defense on the 2017 team, they win the national championship going away against everybody.
I think if you put it on the 2018 team, you're maybe winning a national
With
title.
Kyler.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they got down, 30 to 31 to 7?
28 to 0.
Hell, I think that 2017 team probably wins a national title with the 21 defense. That 21 defense was markedly better than 2017 was.
Yeah.
So I went back and looked at the last 20 years of OU's defense to see where this next year's defense might rank. And there's no good statistic to look at every single year. So I looked at total defense, scoring defense, and turnovers per game. OU has only finished in the top 50 in those three categories in the same year 7 times. They've only done it 3 times in the last 10 years. Do you think you guys know what 3 years those were in those last 10 seasons?
So going back to
2013 to 2023, they only finished in the top 3 of those categories 3 times.
2020.
2020 is one.
COVID, asterisk. 2013?
Yeah.
2013 is one.
Mm-hmm.
God, it might be. Was it 2014?
No. 2014 they were really bad.
What you got, Bob?
2015.
15.
When they made the playoff.
So 13, 15, and 20.
Yep.
Oh, against Clemson. Okay. That playoff.
But I think OU can reach the same. I can't remember what the exact numbers were, but I do think OU can get in the top 50 in all 3 of those categories. This year they were 48th in scoring defense, 80th in total defense. They give up a lot of yards, and 5th in the country in turnovers per game, which is the highest they've had since, I believe, the national championship.
I think the one thing that Michigan probably didn't get enough attention going into it, they might be one of the most disciplined teams in the history of college football, just in terms of a team that won the national championship. 45 penalties all year is an insane number. The turnover number that Cole Kublik put out, that they had only turned the ball over 5 times on offense this year, and 4 of them came in one game against Bowling Green. That's incredible.
They also just beat the shit out of some teams. I mean, I think what was the stat that they're the first team in a long time that has led every single game at halftime?
Yeah. And for what was it, like the first 6 or 7 weeks?
I mean, they didn't play a tough schedule to start.
I think it was the first, and it might even been longer than the first 6 or 7 weeks. They had not defended a first and goal all season.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Did you have anything you wanted to weigh in on the whole Brent NIL, how they handle it?
No, I mean, look, I think my take is what I said earlier, that I do think that they're doing a good job in some aspects of NIL, and I think that what they've done with the preferred walk-on stuff is awesome. You want to fill out all those spots. That's going to make your competitive depth, quote unquote, better. I just think that on some of these targets, they have to pony up, and I don't know if I really don't know if that's a Brent thing that he doesn't want to do that, or if there's. I think part of the issue is I think OU has the money, and they have boosters that have a lot of money. Those boosters are not used to having to pay the amount of money that it costs to get some of these guys. And I think that's part of the issue is they look at it and go, why would we pay, Lance Hurd or Caden Green or whoever it is, $800,000, $1 million, whatever it takes to get the guy. Like we're Oklahoma. We don't need to do that. I think that mindset needs to change a bit to compete with some of these guys. And I don't think that's just a Brent problem.
No.
Because I think Brent would be more if
I think
if one
that's
of their
probably a
boosters
problem at Alabama,
Yes.
Georgia, everywhere.
the Blue Bloods
historically
a lot of places. I mean, it's one of those things that, yeah.
I was just going to say, it reminds me a lot of the Bob Stoops will win with you or without you thing that was great while you're competing for national titles, but the second you weren't anymore, they were like, well, I'll go win somewhere that is. Like, and so it changed. Like, it's easy to play that hand when you're dealing from strength. It's a little harder when you're trying to come from behind a little bit.
It is interesting, like you said, George, the programs that are doing this are the ones, I mean, A&M started it. The ones most desperate to be relevant again.
And it hasn't exactly, and what I'm saying is it hasn't exactly, sure, they're probably achieving high, like an Ole Miss and Missouri are achieving higher than they typically would, right? But it's not resulting in them winning national championships.
It's not putting them in a different category.
I do think if Oklahoma all of a sudden says, hey, we are going to pay 1 to 2 to 3 guys that amount of money to get them, maybe that does put Oklahoma over the hump that they're missing right now. Because I do think,
I think Texas is pretty close to being that program. Like,
yeah, Texas
they're
has
paying
done a
for
good
guys,
job, but they're not doing it. I don't think they're being crazy about it either, though. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, they've Josh, haven't they won some interesting battles? Texas with maybe some other people that are known as, I don't know, Ole Miss if they've won any against them, but it seems like, or they've secured a kid before he really got.
But Texas
crazy.
has always been able to land great talent.
But it's like this Hurd thing is just like, it's maddening because you have Lane Kiffin sitting in the middle of the ocean for a week. He took his visit to OU. Like, this is where they just need to close the deal. He hasn't been to Ole Miss. They're stalling. Lane Kiffin wants a few more days out fishing.
It's incredible.
And, I mean, he's like, well, when we get there, we want him to come. Like, get him. Now, close the fucking deal. Just close the deal. They're dragging their feet.
I don't know how somebody that is in Hurd's spot, and I don't know what he's thinking on this, and I don't know the discussions that he's had, they're basically saying, we'll get to you when we get to you.
Yeah.
Like, they're not.
Just know that we're going to give you a better offer than anybody else has got, but just wait till our coach is done fishing.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
And they just got the North Carolina offensive tackle. I mean, like we didn't even talk about the Florida USC kid, but like you've put it out there, Josh. Like he's been uneasy about this whole thing. Like, meanwhile, Ole Miss is just signing every offensive tackle that's out there in the portal. OU gets one guy who might not even be that great, and he's uneasy.
Well, and that's my thing, guys. Like, if Oklahoma was losing portal battles to, like, Michigan, okay, I kind of get it. Like, lot of lawyers, lot of high-powered executives come out of Michigan. I get it. We're talking about Ole Miss. The highest poverty rate in the United States is in Mississippi. You cannot tell me that Oklahoma doesn't have the money to compete with Ole Miss. Now, do they want to? That's the question. Like, and like, you know, we talked about earlier, there's several avenues that goes down, but like for the right guy, for a couple of guys, 1 or 2 or 3 guys come into your locker room making big bucks because they've done it. Like I get it if we're talking about, you know, high school kids. Like I think that can be problematic, but like say Deion Burks came in and was kind of, you know, he'd made some money in the portal, which obviously I'm sure he did. But if he had a big number, okay, fine. Like that guy has had a huge year at Purdue last year and has earned it. It's not like, oh, well, he's only valuable if he did it here at Oklahoma. That's bull. That doesn't work. So a couple of guys that make your roster clearly better, I don't know. That just feels like it feels a lot like Dabo, like just sticking his heels in and not really concerning himself. Guys, I don't know if you saw that. Clemson's the only team in the top 25 in the country that doesn't have a portal transfer.
Just dumb.
That's crazy.
It's insane.
By the way, the other aspect of this that we haven't talked about is this money that is being used to pay these players. It's coming from a very emotional place. Like it may be coming from people that have it, but what if like Ole Miss just decides, hey, we'll tell these guys that we're going to pay them, and then we'll find out if they're any good, and if they're not, we'll just come up with a reason not to pay them. Like that shit could be going on. I wouldn't put it past anybody.
I mean, to be completely honest, now that it's all in the rearview mirror, we shouldn't be surprised by any of this. They got Spencer Sanders to go sit in his final year of college.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be surprised, I guess.
I mean, it's just unbelievable. So
Truly.
Well, I mean, we're acting like they got hurt. They have. I mean, it's not official or anything, but just want to put that out there.
A little bit of breaking news out of the college football world. Our buddy Billy Embody is reporting that LSU is expected to hire Texas's Bo Davis as the defensive line coach.
Wait, didn't he already?
Oh.
Didn't somebody, was it Florida that tried to get him already and he backed out?
He is an LSU grad, I believe.
He is an LSU grad. No, well, I think that LSU came after him, and then he said no, reportedly, and they've come back. Okay. Yeah, now he's going. So, kind of interesting.
Is he going to be the DC or the D-line coach?
It says D-line coach per Billy Embody.
Have they hired a DC yet?
LSU?
Yeah.
Not that I know of.
Guys, speaking of schools learning to adapt to the world, Texas for so long loved to have this, almost like a Michigan thing where we're smarter than you, we're better than you. We would never hire unsavory characters. Bo Davis used to have a show cause on him. Like there was he was involved in plenty of sticky NCAA recruiting situations. Now, LSU, nobody's got any doubt LSU has no problem with that. They know what's what. But this also lends a lot of thought to how long has this all been known, guys? Dominic McKinley committed to LSU 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Just kind of out of
right?
nowhere? You think he didn't know where Bo Davis was going? So that's just one of those interesting storylines where I know people like, why did this recruit do that? I just sit on it and wait. See what happens. I bet it makes some sense when it's all over.
It's just like the Zach Alley stuff. We've talked about it a lot. I think that's been in the works for a while with Oklahoma.
That was just such a strange.
Do we know if Jacksonville State visited James Nesta at any point in the recruiting process? Did Zach Alley stop by and see him?
That would be interesting. All right, George, anything else you wanted to hit on before we get out of here?
No. I'm getting my haircut this week. Me and Eddie get the same haircut at the same place. Not the same
haircut. We talked
haircut,
about
but
that, yeah.
Yeah, I heard that earlier. Midtown Barbers, they're great. No free ads, though.
Okay. I was wondering, like, you getting free cuts or something?
No.
I need to get in on this action. Excited about Isaac and Joe?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what I was going to say. That's going to be a lot of fun. Obviously, I've known Joe since freshman year of college. We've been friends, and then Isaac I've gotten to know now recently. But I think they're both going to be great. I think obviously, they've been around the program forever, so they can kind of speak to that. But I think they also have a good pulse on the fan base.
Yeah.
And so I think them having that balance, because I think you want to be reactionary but not overreactionary, and I think both of them are pretty good about that when it comes to the program and those sorts of things. So I think it's going to be fun to sit down with them tonight and kind of introduce them. And
you're spreading your wings a little bit.
Yeah,
going without Eddie on a show. What this is I'm momentous.
I think that a lot of people just want me to be like Eddie's Robin. And that's all good and fun, but look, I'm my own man. I don't need Eddie.
We better end the pod before violence erupts in this,
the breakup beginning. That was a shot.
People were predicting Eddie and I to break up a couple weeks ago on the Stuff pod. But
let me tell you,
it almost happened during San Antonio.
It was very close in San Antonio.
I just love San Antonio. That's all I can say. What's up with these Jews in New York?
Okay, the tunnels, yeah.
Is that not one of the most unbelievable stories ever? I'm fascinated by it.
It's very weird.
I said this morning. The Hasidic Jewish community I find to be fascinating. I know nothing about them. I think it's obviously growing up in Oklahoma.
I can tell you this, as someone who's ordered a shit ton of stuff from BH Photo, they take their holidays very seriously.
Is that owned by Hasidic Jews?
I think they're, I don't know, owned by, but very, obviously every holiday they close that I don't even know are holidays. Like, there's a lot of Jewish holidays, a lot of Hasidic holidays.
It's crazy. The story has captivated me.
Yeah.
It's
so
kind
it was
of incredible.
NYPD, right? They just found these tunnels.
Yeah,
and they started investigating.
Isn't
them?
there
somewhat? Yeah.
Isn't there a rumor that on OU's campus there's like underground tunnels from building to building?
I think that there are. I don't know what buildings there are, but I've heard of that.
We should go investigate that.
Do you guys ever go in the tunnels in Oklahoma City?
I didn't know there were.
I did when I was growing up. There's actually a couple of really good like sandwich places, I think, down there.
They've got like a speakeasy somewhere down there now.
I've never been down there.
Okay.
Or
I don't know.
that.
I've lived in Oklahoma City now since March, so we're coming up on a year. I don't know where anything is. I have to text Eddie all the time, like, hey, where can I go? I texted him this weekend. I was like, hey, where's the closest place to get laundry detergent in downtown Oklahoma City?
It's not a good spot if you're looking for something like that. You got to go all the way up to 23rd or Classen.
But there's always too, like, my friends are always like, hey, let's go to this bar, this restaurant. I'm like, I've never even heard of that place. So I'm learning a lot.
It's part of being in the BLC.
When Tiffany and I had to take that little trip for again, had a family funeral, had a death in the family. We were up there, and Tiffany kept showing me, like, we were driving through Midtown, and we kept seeing these places, and she's like, that's probably where Eddie and George live. Like, she clearly has a high opinion of both of you, because they were very kind of cool bachelor patty looking areas, and I'm like, no, I know where Eddie lives. I've been there. I don't know where George lives.
George lives in a cool area. He can literally, if there's like a good concert in town, he can just walk out of his building, and it's right in front of him.
Correct.
I
walked to Thunder games.
Sleeping, if you want to go to sleep early, but
no, you can't hear it.
Okay.
I live right across I don't care if people know where I live. I live right across the street from the Criterion. I live literally, I could walk to Eddie's apartment, but over in Deep Deuce.
So if anybody's interested in getting into stalking, George is offering you a real opportunity here.
George seems like he would welcome stalkers.
I wouldn't
for a little while. Like, he would think
if it gets my follower account up.
Was that movie with Bradley Cooper and I
love Bradley Cooper. I don't know what you're talking about.
He's like a TV reporter, and he has a stalker. It's what's her name? Miss Congeniality.
Sandra Bullock.
Sandra
Bullock.
Something about Steve or something like that.
I have no idea.
Oh yeah, I've never seen it, but I know which.
I think it's called About Steve or something like that.
About Steve, maybe.
Yeah.
I did watch the movie Saltburn.
Yeah, let's not talk about that.
Don't watch it.
He told me the premise, and it's just no.
It's a lot.
I read the. I'm going through Fargo right now, and I was like, what am I going to watch after Fargo? And I was like, well, let me see what that is. And I was like, that looks real creepy. That looks like Midsummer or something.
It's
very uncomfortable to me.
It's overly creepy. I also saw the Sydney Sweeney movie with Glenn Powell, Anyone But You, this weekend. Very cheesy rom-com, but not bad.
I'm currently trying to dive back through the Creed library because
it was on TV last night.
They fascinate me. Yeah.
It was on Paramount last night.
I think the only reason that Creed has had a resurgence is because of that Cowboys thing. That turned into like a meme that everybody uses now. And
I thought it was the Rangers.
No, it was a Dallas Cowboys game. When the guy was flying from the ceiling and all that.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the movie Creed.
No.
Oh.
No, that was on last night.
Yeah.
It is weird seeing that movie when the female lead has become such a big star and everything else, and she was kind of an unknown when that movie came out.
Yeah. I love the Rocky movies and Creed movies, all that stuff.
It's good. Most young people hate them.
Well, my dad.
I think all the Creeds have been awesome.
My dad forced me to watch all the Rockies when I was a kid.
The last guy got canceled now, so they can't have he can't be back.
Who?
The Creed 3 guy got canceled for sexual.
Oh yeah. Majors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Killed the Marvel franchise too while he was at it.
Yeah, he did.
All right, that's gonna do it. Enough for the small talk, the weird small talk at the end.
Hell of an end.
We're looking forward to greeting Isaac and Joe tonight, and probably won't be. I don't know. We don't know if something will be up on YouTube. We'll probably do some promos and stuff out of what we do, but probably look for the first show of that to be next week rather than this week. So don't freak out. Ask us where that is. When's it coming out? We'll let you know, and we'll have an announcement that run on social for all that too. So looking forward to it. Thanks to Bob Przybylo. Thanks to Eddie Radosevich, George Stoya, Josh McQuistion. I'm Kerry Murdoch, and we'll see you right back here next week for another edition of the Unofficial 40 Podcast on SoonerScoop.com.